Hello and welcome to the Strategic Risk Mind podcast. This is your host, Joe Anderson, and we're excited to have you today. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Dustin Carlson. Dustin is the president of SRA 831B administration. They are a very intriguing company. I'll let him tell you a little bit about that himself, but graduated from University of Idaho in finance, oversees our internal operations, and really, they have about a decade of experience working in risk management and insurance. And so I'm really excited to have a conversation. Dustin and his team have some really innovative and cool ways to be able to transfer risk and help businesses as they're growing and expanding. So Dustin, why don't you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and some of the things you like to do for fun. Tell us about your company a little bit.
Yeah, well, Dustin Carlson, as Joe said, thanks for everybody for listening. I almost said born and raised in Idaho, but I can't claim the born part quite. Moved here when I was very young. I'm almost a lifer in Idaho here, and everything that comes with that, I love to do. Outdoors, fish, hunt, all of those types of things. Love doing that. I got my family here in the local area. I went to University of Idaho up north. I've that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
Yeah,
I
that's awesome.
run SRA. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about, SRA and what you guys do as a firm, and then we'll ask you some questions to get a little bit more info.
Yeah, sounds great. SRA, we help business owners mitigate risk, and it's really the risk that they can't mitigate through traditional insurance. Traditional insurance, they do a great job with, the physical things, the property, and those types of things, liability, obviously, of course. But there's a lot of gaps in that coverage as well. And so we use a section of the tax code, 831B, that allows business owners to defer taxes on their revenue in order to save up for a rainy day, for when things like a COVID-19 happens. Or I was just talking to a gentleman in Texas that, had some ice storms that came through several years ago, and they had to shut down their business for an extended period of time. So when these types of things happen, and you go to turn to your traditional insurance, if it's a business interruption, they may say, well, there was no direct property damage to your place of business, so there's no triggering event for your business interruption as part of your property policy. And those are the types of gaps that we look to fill in. We think traditional insurance does a great job. We're not here to replace it, but we're here to enhance it using an 831B program for folks. And we have clients all throughout the U.S., from Hawaii to North Carolina, everywhere in between. Obviously have quite a bit here in the Intermountain West, Idaho, Utah, those states. We manage currently about 800 active plans. We call them 831B plans. And we say that because we like to really compare it to the 401k plan. Every business owner knows what 401k is. You probably never even heard of 831B. But if you look at it like a 401k, it's, 401k allows you to defer taxes on your income in order to save up for retirement. 831B acts much in the same way, but instead of retirement, you're saving up for that rainy day in your business. If it happens, that storm comes, our tagline is, it's going to help you weather the storm when that type of thing happens.
That's so awesome. Yeah. And I think it's one of those tools that's becoming more and more relevant as we see the world changing at a quicker pace, right? We see innovation coming online a lot faster than it used to. Remember talking to my dad. He used to work at Pac Bell, and he was involved in fiber optics when they were bringing that online. He was an electrical engineer. And he said it was like 20 to 30 years for that technology to come online. And you look now and it's, 6 months sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And so it's such a faster pace of change, and being able to have a policy that can help fill in those gaps on that insurance coverage, really help level out earnings probably is a big one, right? Leveling out earnings so you don't have a big loss one year, helping you be able to sustainably grow and be able to take advantage of opportunities in a crisis that other people aren't ready for.
Mhm.
And that's a lot of what we do at Fortify Risk too. So there's a really neat connection there. Um, kind of talking about risk exposures, what do you think the biggest risk is that most business owners don't realize? Because you guys are administrating a lot of different claims, right? So you
Mhm.
probably get a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, I'll give you two, and I'll start on the high level. I think the biggest risk business owners have is not understanding their existing insurance policies and what they're
Okay.
actually covered for, and knowing, hey, if this type of thing that I'm concerned about, if that happens, am I covered for that? A lot of business owners during COVID-19 found out that they weren't covered for pandemics. They weren't covered for business interruptions
Yeah.
because the government told you to shut down. So understanding your policy and knowing where the gaps are, and then,
Mhm.
knowledge is power. Once you have that, you can figure out, okay, how do I address it? Because my insurance company might not be willing to. How am I going to finance this risk at the end of the
Yeah.
day? Uh, and you talk to someone like Joe who can do a full analysis for you and help you find those. Highly recommend doing that. But to get specific, the cyber breaches continue to
Mhm.
be a major risk, and uh, a, a, it's only gotten worse. To your point about innovations, AI has made scam emails pretty flawless now. They don't come with the grammar mistakes or the
Yeah.
weird spellings and all of that. They put those through AI, and they look like a legitimate email. And we're seeing a lot of folks that are falling prey to that. We have clients every year that they'll get an invoice from one of their vendors, and then shortly after that, a scammer will follow up with a second invoice saying, "Hey, sorry, we had our old banking instructions on that old invoice I sent you. Go ahead and use these new ones." And the bookkeeper, or whoever, looks at that and says, "Okay, I'll send it to the new bank." And then now you've sent money into a black hole, and
Mhm.
a lot of times you're not going to get that back. And so that's the type of risk we can cover under our cyber policy. You can go buy a cyber policy off the shelf, or your general liability policy might have a sublimit for it inside of it.
Yeah.
But oftentimes you're going to see an exclusion for things like employee mistakes, not following proper procedures. So those are the types of exclusions that we're looking to address with what we do at SRA.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. The cyber's a big one. Um, And I think, people are paying attention to that. I was just talking to somebody at a social the other day that has cyber coverage. They're a quasi government entity, but they were just concerned that it may not cover everything they want it to
Mhm.
cover. I thought,
Yeah.
man, that's a really fascinating conversation to have, right? Because a lot of times in the past, as I've worked in insurance and risk management, people are like hesitant to add more insurance coverage. But now I think that's shifting a little bit, and they're trying to figure out, how do I gain the coverage I need for the future, not just the past, right?
Hmm.
I need to look forward and go, hey, what am I going to need in the next 6 months or year? And how do I make sure my policy is covering that?
Yeah.
So, traditional insurance models, and you and I know this because we've in the industry, but they leave a lot of gaps. There's exclusions, there's carve outs, carve backs, and you have to reference all these parts of the policy to figure out what your coverage is. Could be really confusing for people.
Hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that is really intriguing about SRA 831B is you guys bring together some experts, and you can work with their insurance broker or with their provider, CPA, financial planner, and really help them figure out what they have and then what they could have,
Hmm.
and set up a system to where what they could have isn't necessarily costing anything over time unless they use it, right? So kind of like an HSA plan. I love that reference because,
Yeah.
you're kind of saving up money and it just keeps rolling over. And then all of
Hmm.
a sudden, when you have a claim, now you have money to pay for it, right? And it's
Yeah.
not going to take your business down. And that's such a great thing. But, when you guys are working with companies like that, help me understand what the process is. Like, let's say, I'm a $20 million manufacturer, and I come into you guys and I say, hey, we have a really robust insurance program. Here's some of our concerns. We have these gaps. We know of a couple of them. Maybe you can But maybe there's more. Where do you start with a company like that?
Yeah, it really begins as a fact-finding mission and really in both directions, right? Because like I said earlier, a lot of business owners have no idea what 831B is or have heard of it before. So it really is an education process from the outset. It's us learning about the client, the risks that they're concerned with, completing our underwriting application or our kind of a get to know you application a little bit and seeing under the hood, right, of, oh,
Mm.
hey, I have these exposures and so on. And then, a lot of insurance policies are fairly standard boilerplate. And, we kind of know what the industry standards are. So if a client's worried about one exposure, we'll
Yeah,
know that quite frequently that's going to not going to be covered, right? So we're able to address that through just really a fact-finding mission with the client, and then the client understanding from us what an 831B is, how it operates, so that they understand that, they're like it or not getting into the business of insurance a little bit,
yeah.
and they're going to be using this alternative risk financing option where they're going to own an insurance company that's insuring their business. Uh, uh, so there's a lot to understand, and it begins with that is just both parties understanding each other.
So as the owner of this insurance company, then um, they're able to use the money they put in there to pay for claims. And you guys just administer that. So you charge a fee. I have a self-directed IRA or investment account. And it reminds me of that because what I do is I say, hey, I want to buy silver or I want to buy a piece of land in that investment account. And the administrator just charges me a fee and they transact the business and do all the
Mhm.
record keeping necessary to keep me out of trouble. And I think not quite as simple as that maybe, but in a similar way, that's where you guys can help. Talk about a little bit about the advocacy and the reach that you guys have and some of the efforts you do for your clients with regards to the tax law and some of the things there.
Yeah, with any tax deferral program, there's been abuses related to 831B, just as there's been with 401k when it first started, or really first started to gain traction. And so, the IRS does have its qualms when it comes to 831B, and we've taken it upon ourselves to be an industry leader in demanding reform, because we do operate 831B fairly conservatively relative to our industry, and we want to see the guardrails put up because we believe 831B, the power of it as an alternative risk financing option, we believe that it should be an ordinary business practice. It isn't
Mhm.
for every business. You need to be at a maturity level as a business in order to really take full advantage of an 831B and the power
Yeah,
of it. But it's important that business owners are aware that this is an option for them to address certain risks that they're concerned with. They've a lot of business owners, they start out at zero, right? They're an entrepreneur, they're bootstrapping, and then, you know,
yeah,
20-year overnight success, they have this successful business now, and their mindset kind of turns to, how do I protect this now? How do I protect what I've built? And that's really where the 831B can come in and be that added layer of protection for a business owner.
yeah.
And that's why we take the advocacy positions that we do is we just I even got on a little mini soapbox there for 2 seconds, but I caught myself.
Yeah.
But that's why we have that, because we just have such belief in the power of 831B, and we want to see it normalized, and the IRS to be able to back off, but also the abuses to end as well.
It's kind of like buying a car, maybe in some ways. You get the salespeople that tell you everything's perfect, and then you get off the lot and you got an oil leak, and the engine breaks down in a month. Or you got the other guys that kind of under promise, right, and over deliver. And
Mm.
I kind of think of you guys like that. And then they're like, hey, if anything goes wrong, bring it back in a year, right? And
Mhm.
there's a little bit of that with you guys where you're basically advocating for your clients and trying to make sure you're not on that line of on the edge. You're way over on the conservative side. So that's really cool. Yeah, interesting. So one of the things that you and I have talked about a little bit is the Cal fires and some of the claims that came out of there. Um, we've talked about, how coverage doesn't always extend in an emergency like that
Mhm.
because a lot of times it's peril based. If you didn't have a fire at your location, but your business is totally interrupted
Mhm.
because all the people you rely on can't get you the stuff that you need or the services that you need.
Or in the
Sometimes,
case of one of our clients, their
yeah.
entire client base was evacuated. They were gone, for
Oh, there,
extended period of time. Yeah.
that's another one I didn't think about, but you look at that third party or dependent risk, right? And I think it's such a fascinating topic because we're a very dependent business culture. It's very well connected. We have third party relationships where we use them for specialty areas that we don't necessarily need to have a person in play on. Independent contractors, we're dependent upon government entities and individuals who live in the area, different things like that. And so, talk about third party risk a little bit and maybe that dependent kind of risk and how does an 831B plan help there?
Yeah, if I could amend my earlier answer, maybe this is the largest risk business owners have today. I would say it's definitely the one that flies under the radar the most.
Mm-hmm.
If you rely on third parties to do your day-to-day business, and they get interrupted, what is that going to do to your business? And a
Yeah.
lot of folks, Amazon Web Services was out a couple weeks ago. A lot of folks had outages because of that, because Amazon Web Services provide services to so many other companies
Mm-hmm.
that if the downstream effects of that was a lot of interruptions to business. We saw, uh, yeah, just all these interruptions. But uh, yeah, so if you rely on a third party, like here at SRA, we have a lot of our business that we do in Salesforce. If Salesforce went down for a day or two, or God forbid, even longer than that, we would be running around with our heads on fire, trying to figure out what to do,
Yeah.
and we would have a very hard time, help serving our clients during that outage. And so that's the software piece. But then, yes, you have the utilities. You have, maybe you have a business next door that draws customers into your area, the, attraction, uh, and they go out of business, and now that anchor store's gone, and now you don't have people coming to your place of business because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's all of these indirect ways to suffer financial harm that really really fly under the radar for, I think, a lot of people, where uh, people, and no knock on business owners, they just don't have the time to really sit and think
Yeah.
these things through. I think.
Well,
Which
and
is
it's
why
such
they
a
have insurance professionals to really
that,
consider these things for them.
that's right. And it's such a fascinating risk because it's somewhat infinite in its scope because you can hire a third party to do almost anything. We had
Hmm.
a company that was in real estate that hired a third party uh, drug testing and background check firm, which you think, okay, that's pretty standardized, pretty legit. I mean, what can go wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't get their certificate of insurance and they ended up making a mistake and letting a criminal come on the property and they committed a violent act and all of a sudden
Oh,
there's a lawsuit and it's like, well, wait a second, we didn't do that, it was these guys, but they can't subrogate to them because they have no insurance, right?
mm-hmm.
And and so it's just and they just closed shop, they're a small little firm, and so people don't always think through all those logic steps, and so it's such an interesting way to be able to look at things of being able to first out map that out, right? And that's some of what we do in partnership with firms like you, but then be able to go, okay, here's a vehicle where you can cover those risks, maybe have it written into the policy or other things or underwritten and look for ways to cover some of those unknown risks. And I think what happens sometimes, Dustin, and you've probably run across this too, is it's like out of sight, out of mind. I just don't want to think about it because I don't have an answer. So I'm just going to put it over here in the corner. It's like,
Yeah,
well, wait a second. Those are the ones that really bite you sometimes because it's like you have no plan now. And so
yeah,
it's kind of cool to be able to come into a client and be able to say, I know some guys that can help you with some coverage on this there's a way to cover a risk like this. So maybe it makes sense to uncover that blanket you got in the corner that's covering this thing up and pull it out a little bit and see what it looks like.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, I mean, where that is most severe, obviously, is with life insurance. No one wants to talk about themselves dying, so that no one wants to have that uncomfortable conversation. But yeah, as a business owner, you don't want to talk about a bad day in your company. So that
Yeah.
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I think when you look at risk strategy and how do you manage risk in an organization, right? We have the managing part of it, which is what a lot of companies make money doing, right? So let's be honest, the risk isn't all bad. There's risk and reward, and you make money taking risks sometimes. But then you have the reduction side, right? Where you can have certain processes and procedures where you reduce the risk. And you can have the transfer side where you're transferring it to someone else. And then you have the risk avoidance. Say, that's just not an area I want to go into, right? And you guys play such a great role on not only the reduction side, but by your process, you help them reduce risk too. And I love that because when you're analyzing things and you're looking for ways to cover it, you're also having conversations, my guess is, with clients about, hey, well, what's the way to reduce this risk so you don't have this claim, right? Talk about the risk reduction side of what you guys do with clients a little bit there.
Yeah. So all of our clients, when they're with our company, they're in a co-op with a bunch of other clients of ours as well, and so they're sharing in each other's claims. And I bring that up because that in it of itself is kind of a learning experience too, because we'll have quarter claims every quarter that we're billing clients for, and they'll see something that happened to this business or that business, and so that kind of begins to raise awareness for certain types of losses. But yeah, we obviously want to have risk control. We want to see our clients, not have bad days. We want to see their businesses be successful and risk free, and which is impossible, but as close as we can get to it. But yeah. So we take risk control measures. On the cyber front, we provide our clients with things like cybersecurity training, where they can give it to their employees even, so the employees can, which, by the way, the employees are the weakest link in any cyber plan that you have. But things like that to stay trained. Having relationships with Fortify Risk and folks like you, Joe, to refer our clients to be able to take them through that risk reduction review where Fortify is looking at all of the policies, looking at and not just insurance policies, but your employee manual, your SOPs, all of those types of things. Having those folks available to our clients definitely leads to better overall awareness of risk.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of encapsulating or summarizing this, but traditionally you have an attorney and maybe a CFO or a banker, a CPA, helping you manage some risk in business, and maybe an insurance broker, and you add in a firm like yours that is a way to reserve and cover areas that aren't covered in your insurance policy and really give you a different angle on managing risk. I just think that's such a great added tool and an added resource for companies. So this is really cool. Well, I wanted to ask you kind of a fun question too. If running a business, I'm going to throw this at you, see what you think. If running a business was like playing chess, what piece do you think represents you and SRA 831B the best, and why?
Okay. Well, now I got to remember back to chess and what all the pieces do, right?
And where they move, yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you're kind of a chess guy, I mean, you probably think 10 moves ahead every day.
I'm terrible at chess, but I do try to think 10 moves ahead. But no, I'd say just for its ability to castle, probably the rook, just because that's what we want to help our clients do is build kind of a castle around their business and be able to weather the storm when things happen. To not to steal your name, but to fortify, right? That's the goal that we have for our clients.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine talk about building moats around your business, right? And we used to build walls and have security protections on access. Now a lot of that's virtual. So what does a virtual moat look like around your castle, right? It's a
Mm,
great concept, and I think
yeah.
it's these kind of things, innovative, thoughtful ways to defer, use deferred money on taxes to be able to fund some losses down the road on in the good years, saving up for the bad years. These are all great concepts,
Hmm.
but what's a vehicle to do that really works well? And this is a great one. So thank you for taking time for us today, Dustin. This has been really good. And I'll kind of leave you with the last word. If you were just able to impress one thing on our listeners, as it regards to risk management, some of the work that you guys do, is there one area that you could just kind of give them, hey, this is something you might want to check into or pay attention to?
I would just kind of reiterate what I've maybe already said is, lean on your insurance professionals and reach out to folks like Joe, like SRA. If you're concerned about risk, if you're, lying awake at night, concerned about a certain type of risk that's affecting your business, there are alternative ways to address risk other than traditional insurance. And
Yeah.
it's important for business owners to understand all the options that are out there.
Okay. Well, thanks, Dustin.
Yeah, thank
Appreciate
you,
you
Joe.
coming on to the Strategic Risk Mind by Fortify Risk Management. I'm your host, Joe Anderson. It's been great having you today, and we'll see you next time. God bless.